All right, we will go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. My name is Ruthva Shivani. I am the operations lead for Accenture's Boston Innovation Hub. On behalf of Accenture, the Chamber, and City Awake, we hope you are joining us today feeling safe and healthy. City Awake is a program of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce that focuses on young professionals ages 21 to 39. It is designed to build community and engage the next generation of leaders in dialogue about the most pressing issues facing our region. Today's program particularly is part of our new Skill Up series. This webinar series engages and enhances Boston's workforce as we all manage our work and ourselves during COVID-19. As we all navigate through this unprecedented time, many of us are experiencing a fully dispersed workplace for the first time. Today, we are joined by two thought leaders who will help us to explore best practices of managing a remote workforce. I do want to start with a few notes. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the Chamber's YouTube page shortly after the presentation. And we'll start the program by hearing from each of our speakers. After their brief overviews, you will be put into breakout rooms where you'll be given prompts and asked to come back to the group with any questions or comments that you've come up with. Please be sure to submit your questions throughout the webinar using the chat feature. And we do ask that you remain muted until you're split into your breakout sessions. You'll be able to speak in those rooms and then ask that you mute yourselves as you come back to the group. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce our special guests. Professor Tsedal Neeley is the Naylor Fitzhugh Professor of Business Administration at Harvard Business School. Professor Neeley teaches in a variety of executive programs and has written extensively about how global teams succeed. Tsedal's work also focuses on how to navigate the global and digital work environment on issues ranging from digital literacy and tools, the digital leader, and leading agile teams through company-wide digital transformations. Joining Professor Neeley is Jennifer Reimert, Vice President, Solutions Consulting and HR Executive in Residence at WorkHuman. Jennifer has more than 25 years of HR industry experience guiding organizations and senior leaders on how to encourage their people and teams to discover their full potential and do their best work. In her role at WorkHuman, Jen and her team have helped 4.5 million people around the world have a more inclusive, positive employee experience at their workplace. Thank you both for joining us today. We are lucky to have you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Professor Neeley.
Thank you so much for that generous introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm really thrilled to be with you this morning to talk about some best practices around leading virtually. For many people, this is a new experience. For other people, the new experience is the fact that we are actually in the midst of a global pandemic. So what I'm going to talk about today are some best practices that are really important, some fundamentals that are really important to keep in mind. And hopefully later on, if there are other questions that you have, we'll be able to discuss those given the terrific structure of today's session. So one important mindset that you have to have when you're leading virtual teams is that you have to trust people. You have to trust that they're working. You have to trust that they will deliver. This is Ernest Hemingway's best line for us. The best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. So for many virtual team leaders today, there's a question of, I can't see what people are doing. I don't know how to manage and control this. How do I deal with this? So mindset number one is you have to trust people, and you're looking and evaluating outcomes, deliverables, and not process. You have to let people determine what process can look like for them. And I'll talk a little bit about that. The second thing I want to mention is that with remote work, ordinarily productivity goes up, not down. So with remote work, productivity during ordinary times goes up. the evidence on this is robust. Not only are you removing all the commute times and other things, but remote work has been around in earnest for about 20 years, since the digital tools and enabling mediated technologies have facilitated them. Don't fear that because with remote work, suddenly productivity is going to go down. But there are a number of things that you need to do to make sure that people are able to work well. In other words, enabling conditions that you have to think about. One, you have to do a working from home group launch. What that means is that you bring your group together, if you haven't done this already, and you say, now that we have this situation, we're not physically located together anymore or co-located, and you do a team launch where you talk about how should we communicate? How often should we communicate? What are the barriers that you might see in us working well together? And what are the strengths that we're going to find from this particular means of working? Who's worried about what? How can we address them as a group? Team launches are critical. They're success factors for teams to begin with. And relaunches, meaning going back and referring back to the conversations that you've had, are important team success factors. They've never been more important now when people have migrated to working from home. So do a launch. Another very practical thing to do is to make sure that you understand or are able to support what the technological or the technical infrastructure looks like for each of your members. That's a barrier for some people. We can't assume that people have everything that they need. One of the things that we've been seeing lately is that people are competing for bandwidth, particularly since you have spouses or partners who are also working from home. Children, even small ones, who are on their computers trying to do school, competing for more Wi-Fi bandwidth. And people are having to manage bandwidth opportunities. And in some cases, we've been seeing the Cat5 network cables coming back into people's homes. So going right from the router straight to people's computers, because the competition for technology between the times of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. in particular has been really off the charts. So understand what the technical needs of people are and make sure that you are helping fill gaps. And another thing to ensure as a leader is make sure people are not feeling isolated, and make sure that you are facilitating informal contact among your employees. Informal contact is essential to the performance of a group. So how do you do that when people are working from home? We call this structuring unstructured time. You have to structure it, meaning you schedule it. And it could be a virtual lunch, it could be a virtual coffee hour, it could be 3:30 today, let's all get together and check in, see how everyone's doing. But spending time together that's not related to business is essential. These informal interactions are often harder to achieve because you're not located at the same place. But even the smallest amount of physical distance between team members can reduce communication and collaboration agility within groups. So you've got to maintain that, and you've got to facilitate that. Another way to think about this is when you are holding your regular meetings, spend the first 6 to 7 to 8 minutes just checking in, having the spontaneous conversation so that people feel seen and people feel heard and the informal connection is maintained, because that has direct bearing on the performance of the group. The last thing that I'll talk about is flex time. One of the gifts that remote work gives us is that whether we start work at 4 a.m., from 4 to 8, and then take a break and then start working again or not should be the individual's choice. And managers need to give people the room to do that. Flex time is particularly important right now because, as I mentioned earlier, people are managing homeschooling. Many people are taking care of families and parents, as well as dealing with shifts. One partner may start at this time, the other partner may start at this time. So let people use flex time and even encourage it if you find that some people are struggling to manage their time in this kind of global pandemic environment. But flex time is one of the great benefits of remote work that I think we should take advantage of during this time. So I will stop here. I'll turn it back to Rupa, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have later.
Thank you for those insights, Professor Neeley. I feel like I've seen some of them play out in my own work, and definitely some that we can take back to Accenture. So I appreciate it. Jen, we'll turn it over to you. I know that you have 20 years of experience working from home. Do you have any structured or go-to practices that you found useful when managing remote teams?
I do, absolutely. First, though, I want to say thank you to inviting me into your homes. I'm looking at all these videos, and I think it's so special that we've kind of just broken this new barrier in work where we're just at each other's homes together. It makes it feel very personal. So welcome to my home, and thank you for having me in yours. Also, just seeing all your smiles and seeing your faces gives me a lift in this sort of, I'm calling it physical distancing. I'm not calling it social distancing. I actually feel like we're being very social, and we're finding new ways, and I'm excited about the innovative ways that we're doing that. So back to Rupa's question, thank you. And Tsedal had literally listed all the same practices that I feel very heartened that I'm doing the right things, because everything you said, I was like, okay, I've done that. I've led teams around the globe for 20 years. And so in that, I've gone through 9/11. I've gone through the economic crash in 2008, 2009. So these are times when people feel real stress. This is another time people feel stress. And so a practice that I've used and employed, and I've offered to others if it's helpful, is in times of stress, it's helpful to just sort of focus on what can I accomplish today in the present, and staying in the present. And I use this little trick called 311, kind of like when you're walking to the airport and you see 311, 311. So 3 things, just every day. You can either write it the night before or the morning of, depends on how you are. I am kind of a list girl, I'll admit it. I like a list so I can cross it off. But I write just 3 things that you can accomplish today. Because inevitably, as the world is changing, there are going to be interruptions. There's going to be things you're called to do. You're going to need to free up some of that time, as Tsedal mentioned, so you can be flexible. And you need to give yourself some self-care. So 3 things just to accomplish so you feel from a work perspective that you're moving forward on your goals. And then 1 thing for yourself. It's absolutely critical, especially if you're a leader of people. You're going to be giving so much at this time, in this time of stress. And as we've already proven, this is longer than a marathon. This is now a centurion. We're going for 100 days here. So make sure you do something for yourself every day. And that can be small, it can be big, you decide. And then the last one is to give to others in some way, shape, or form. So that could be to a family member, could be to a friend, it could be kind of just reaching out, checking in over text. How you doing? How you coping? I want to talk with you. It could be somebody you haven't talked to in a very long time that you feel like now is more than ever I need to reconnect. It could be as simple as saying thank you to our healthcare workers who are on the front lines in some way, shape, or form that is something you can do. There's so many ways, and I guarantee you that giving serves us that shot of dopamine that then counteracts the cortisol in your brain that's creating stress. So the 3 are 3 things you can accomplish, 1 for yourself and 1 for others. And if you get through the 3 by noon, more power to you. Add 2 more if you can.
I love that. I think that I'm also a list person. I will show everyone my sticky note list for the day where I write out my priorities. So I think it's really helpful to have a little bit of structure. I know that when I started this full-time work from home process about a month ago, I needed to figure out a way to get just a little bit more structure into my day. So I appreciate the 311 tip. I know we've chatted a little bit before about this, but the human element is so important right now. I am absolutely guilty of going into a meeting and saying, let's get the work knocked out and then we can socialize later. But do you have any tips or tricks that you use with your team to bring that human connection in? I know you opened with saying that we've invited you into our homes, and I love that because that is so true. A few minutes ago, my vacuum cleaner was behind me, so we have those elements working from home now. But any tricks for more human connection and elements?
Absolutely. And I think Tsedal said it so well. It's that you have to lead with trust. And that means that in today's world, people are working in whatever capacity they can. We have older siblings who are taking care of younger siblings, and parents are going to be needed at different times. And I have let my team know, so I've communicated with them that I invite them in. If somebody needs you in the middle of a meeting, that is absolutely fine. Come on in, let's meet them. Let's stop and have a human moment and meet the child or meet the parents if it's a multi-generation household. Meet the spouse if they're coming in and just giving them a glass of water, or we've even seen warm baked cookies, which has caused a moment of, oh, I want that to be my family. So, it brings that human element to who they are and really recognizes what's the situation that they're in. And I do see somebody in the chat saying even the pet. We have absolutely had pets. We've seen cats walk across the screen. We've seen puppies. We've seen, and that just shows the love and the kindness. So I say invite that in. I also, as Tsedal mentioned, I start with not diving straight into work. I start with the check-in. How are people doing? What's going on? Especially because my team is all over the country, and then in previous careers it was all over the globe. What's happening in their community might be impacting them that day, and if it's a one-to-one, you want to check in on that. If it's even a team, the team might rally around and help prop that person up if there's something stressful happening, or sharing some goodness that could be the complete opposite. So I fully advocate giving time in your agenda to share what those kind of human elements are happening for the person.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a standing meeting with my supervisor and his 6-year-old. So every day, for some reason at 11 a.m., his 6-year-old wants to chat with his dad, and he comes in and we all talk business. So, and then we have a couple more minutes before we go into our breakout. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this kind of shift to digital work. There is obviously, we've talked about moving digital, we've talked about remote workforces a lot. Do you have any perspectives on this paradigm shift that we're seeing?
I do. I actually, I'm looking for all the positives that come out of it. I think that we have an opportunity to be really innovative. It does mean we need to have an open mindset. We have to be open to the change, which is not everybody is, and it takes a little more time for people to get in that change curve. But if you start looking for the opportunities and start to get comfortable with that, I'll think of one that just from my time in being in HR kind of comes straight to mind, is this concept of telemedicine. I think that's going to be quite revolutionary. And so if I were back in my office as an HR practitioner, I'd be thinking about, do we have telemedicine benefits for our employees? And on one level, that demonstrates a care. Like we want our employees to stay safe, especially now. So how quickly can we stand that up? Can we offer that? Is that a service that can be provided? But if I think about long-term, how will that maybe make healthcare more accessible for people? How can we do that in a way that does make it more accessible? I think about all the positives that could come out of this. Another one that, has nothing to do with HR, but is something that I think is going to happen is we're probably going to start swiping our phones or these readers for payments. We're not going to be carrying credit cards and sticking them in machines. It's all going to be very, through the air, which who knows, like that could feel insecure. It could feel like I'm not ready for, but maybe that will be an okay thing. Who knows? So there's lots of potential changes that are going to come of this. We're already starting to see it, happening day by day.
Absolutely. I think this is definitely a catalyst for some of those changes. Thank you so much for those insights, Jen. We are going to transition into our breakouts now. We'll be separating into breakout rooms for 10 minutes. You'll see a pop-up window. When you see it, please click join. There will be a timer on the top right-hand corner of your screen, and then you'll automatically rejoin the main room at the end of these 10 minutes. So when you split into your groups, just a couple of notes. Please quickly introduce yourselves, your name, your organization, and then assign a note taker so that they can report back to the full group using the chat function. And just some questions to kick you off. Which of these techniques that we've discussed do you already use? And then are there other tips or tricks that you've experienced that work well that you'd like to share with us? So you should be seeing the pop-ups in just a moment, and we will see you back here in 10.
We just came back in, so I don't know what you were just talking about. We just zoomed in from our breakout room. So just joining back in.
Yeah. So
you may want to take it, Jen.
Sure. And then let me know if you have anything to add. So the question was, how do we stay productive and how do we set up a space? What are some tips for that? And first I want to recognize that you may or may not have a room that you can use. Some people have a corner of a dining room table or a kitchen table, or they have to create a makeshift little desk in a spot somewhere. I've seen creativity with closets. So what I would advise is just try to find a place that you could use again and again that's kind of becomes your own, and you can keep adding to it. But make sure you also get up from it every now and again. Like, do not always just keep yourself there. You're going to need breaks more than ever. I think Tsedal mentioned we're being ultra productive. So it's really okay to take a moment, go outside, get some fresh air, come back in, do it safely. So I would say create a dedicated space if you can, so that you don't have to feel like you have to clean it up and unpack it every day. Like, just create a little nook, if you will, and get creative with it. And don't worry, people are not judging. This is a judgment-free zone right now. And I don't know, I hope it always is, and I hope that's one of the changes we have. Like, we should be thinking about what people are, I've told my team, however you show up, if you got a hat on, a hoodie, whatever, like, it's okay. I just want to see your smile. So that's all we ask for.
What I would add is you need to create routines, disciplined set of routines. I talk about going to work at home. So that you wake up at the same time every day, you take a shower, you get dressed, and you go to that place that Jen just described, and you start your work day, and you end your work day at the same time. And these routines are critical so that it doesn't feel like a Saturday to you. And by the way, these routines are also important to the young people in your homes as well. They have to get up at the same time. They have to start school at the same time. Otherwise, it's chaos. As much as people say they love change. We love change. I cut my hair every 6 months. I love change. The reality is we want 95% of our lives to be structured and routinized. And working from home requires it. People are slipping. There's little tasks, or you forget, I didn't respond to that email. I saw it, but I didn't respond to it. A lot of that will happen as people get accustomed to these routines, which means whatever you need to ensure that you're not missing the little things like your to-do lists, you need to do more of, but you have to go to work at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are some great tips. And I think, again, speaking to having lists and needing a little bit of structure, really helpful there. Kind of along the lines of something we discussed before in communication, we have a question here from Emma. are there any tools or anonymous services that you guys have used in the past to accept questions from staff? We've seen some younger employees who are a little shy about asking questions on office calls.
So it's interesting. There are, like Menti, people have been using those in order to survey people anonymously and get their sense on ideas, etc. But what I want to talk about, though, is that one of the things that's really important to do in a virtual meeting environment is to, as a leader, invite people to participate, solicit people's invitations, particularly quiet people or people who are trying to get used to this and don't know how to communicate. So managing airtime, soliciting input, speaking to people one-on-one will be important. The tool that I mentioned is particularly useful when you have a large organization that you're managing, but if you have a smaller team, trying to get people to open up and feel comfortable, or what people talk about, psychological safety, is, I think, the most important thing to do. That people feel psychologically safe to be able to open up and talk about whatever challenges that they might have one-on-one or in the group.
Yeah, absolutely. Jen, anything to add there?
So I agree with all of that. I'm kind of looking at some of the chat. So many questions. So let's move on. I think Tsedal nailed it.
Yeah. I think as a follow-up, I guess, to that one, then Emma also noted, how do we make sure that you're giving recognition? And I know, Jen, you've done some work in the total rewards and recognition space. So how do we make sure that you're giving that to all employees, top and bottom?
So we have a philosophy at WorkHuman that you invite the crowd to do the work for you. It's not always possible for a manager to see the work that employees are doing every day, nor should it be their sole responsibility. That could actually be a single point of failure. And the teams that people work and how work is getting done these days is very collaborative. And there might be a lot of cross-functional teams. So rely on the wisdom of the crowd to call out and offer those moments of gratitude. We have we call it a vitamin G, like let people give their dose of vitamin G every day and start with being grateful. It changes the mindset, changes the tone. And we call that good work up. And that then leads with a place of kindness, collaboration, etc. So we say bring the wisdom of the crowd. I think the other important thing is it has to be led from the top. You know, leaders too can't just rely on that. They have to show up and model the behavior that they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote down vitamin G. I love that. I guess, and you mentioned, we can't just rely on leaders for this. It is everyone. But thinking about leaders, any suggestions, this is from Stacy, any suggestions on managing up when senior leadership is already burdened with COVID-19 response in addition to their regular duties? So Jen, if you want to start that off, and Tsedal, add in anything else for kind of managing up. How do we do that?
I think this goes back to getting really clear on communication, what's going to be most valuable, and just having that straightforward, honest dialogue with your leader of what can I do to help you understand and appreciate either what I'm doing or make sure that I'm working on the things that are going to be in service to our company's goals. And then likewise invite them to say, please let me know if I need to pivot or do anything differently, because as we know, depending on your function, those can be changing very rapidly right now. So it comes back to that regular check-in, continuously asking, and providing. So you might provide first, would you like this in an email? Is that too much to digest because you're getting emails from all over? Would you prefer I leave you a quick voicemail? Do you want me to send you a text? Do you want me to send it to you over Skype? Do you want it in Slack channel? Like, is there another tool your company uses? Like, just have that, what would work best for you? I want to make it easy for you, and then I know I'm meeting your needs. And then that helps to foster that trust, because you guys are meeting each other where you're at, and it opens those lines of communication.
Yeah.
My perspective on this is that I've actually spoken to a lot of leaders of late, and in fact was at a board meeting a couple of nights ago where an organization of 30,000 people, leaders and managers are actually very concerned about employees, and hearing from people that from you to get not only the types of updates that we're hearing about, but for you to communicate your needs, if there are any, whether it's your individual needs or the needs of your team. They would actually really, really, really appreciate that, because it's on their mind to make sure that everyone is okay. And for you to surface whatever issue they need will give them something discreet to address very quickly. There isn't a leader today who's not concerned about how to motivate, how to oversee, and how to create the conditions for people to be able to work well in this new remote setting. So it's a great opportunity to create communication channels with leaders and give them what you need through these status updates. We call this presence management in the digital world. You're managing your presence for your leaders, and there are several techniques that people use in managing their presence. But when you manage up, status updates are particularly important, and well-timed status updates. And if you have requests, make the requests. But you definitely don't want to fall into these out of sight. What's the expression?
Out of sight, out of mind. Yeah.
Out of sight, out of mind dilemma that people get in remote work. So speak up through email, provide status updates. It actually will be very, very welcomed, not a burden. It's part of the one thing that people are concerned about.
Yeah, absolutely. Some great points. And I've seen a couple of questions here, so I'm going to combine them around just the number of ways that we can communicate digitally. We've got Zoom and Skype and email and Slack. How do you manage all of that? How do you kind of avoid the Zoom overload or, communication overload that can also come with our digital work environment?
Right. This is a very important question, and it came up in the breakout room that I was on, and it's coming up over and over again. Number one, people have to take care to consider what is best conveyed through email versus through real-time conversation. I think we are kind of at a place where people are using Zoom probably excessively. And sometimes it's not necessary to use Zoom. Email continues to be really important. And the way to think about whether you use Zoom or whether you use Slack, which is another exploding digital tool that's been around for a long time, but Zoom and Slack or even Skype for business have really been much more ubiquitous nowadays. The thing to understand is that you're making a decision on whether to use an instant mode of communication versus a delayed mode of communication. So email is a delayed mode of communication where you can send something out and do other things versus instant. We're going to Zoom together and meet. Coordinating them and having them are a ton. And knowing that it's exhausting for people, be judicious as to when and how you're using them. Other times you want to have shorter Zoom meetings than normal, and do what's called redundant communication. Shoot an email afterwards summarizing the 2 or 3 things that you want to make sure people have gotten from that brief conversation to ensure, the fidelity of your message has been conveyed fully. So instant versus delayed, and making choices around what to use when, so that you are not exhausting people through Zoom, because it is quite exhausting, particularly with people who are just getting used to this manner of work.
Absolutely.
So I'll just add one thought on that, because I wholeheartedly agree. My manager and I, we actually had that authentic moment together where we're like, gosh, we're just fatigued by all the Zoom. So we just decided together that we see each other enough on the group calls throughout the day. So let's just go to the old fashioned, just call each other up and listen. And I actually expressed for my one-on-ones.
Interesting.
I like to wander around my house. I maybe want to go sit outside, and I can really be present if I'm just listening. So when I'm doing one-on-ones, that's what I've just done is I've said, unless there's something you want to show me on the screen and then we need to actively collaborate on, let's just talk. I mean, that's how we connected before, was just listening to one another and being really present in that. Maybe even stepping away from the computer, because sometimes that can be distracting. You've got lots of things coming in. So just, I think, figure out what works and don't be afraid to ask or to see if they're in the same space as you are, like just another Zoom.
Yeah, absolutely. I do like that this is kind of a moment of empowerment for all of us. Share a little bit of what works, to ask candidly, how can we help? And so I am appreciating that for sure. And we have another question here from Alicia. I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, but how do we find a balance with how often we should have check-ins with our team members, and then managing expectations on how long projects should take during this time? So we do still have to get the work done. So how do we manage those expectations along with being, I think, empathetic to what everyone is going through?
So I'm an advocate of, again, communicating what's going to work for both of you. If you're leading with trust, you don't have to have frequent, check-ins, but you should have it on enough of a rhythm that, to the point of, you don't want them out of sight and out of mind. You want to demonstrate that you see them and they're important and they matter and you value them and you value their contributions. So I don't know that there's a perfect answer other than lead with the idea that it should be what's right for the rhythm. And to check in with one another about, do you want to meet weekly? Do you want to meet every other week? A lot of times, especially depending if they're a long-standing professional and they've always met their goals, they may not need as much and they may not want as much, but you don't know unless you ask. They might say, no, you know what, it helps me to hear from you, because in that we're talking about messages from the top. Maybe it's telling you about the health of the business. That gives me some safety and security that we're doing okay as a business. So I think in this time, we really just have to ask what feels right in this new normal, and check in and recontract with them every so often. Like I did that the other day with one of my direct reports. She was newer to the team. She started with us in January, and we'd been meeting on a regular cadence as she came up to speed. And I said, let's just check in. How do you feel? Is it enough? Is it too much? Do you want to? And so she felt I said, you don't even have to answer now. Just give it some thought and come back to me with what you think is right. There's no, I'm not looking for anything in particular. There's no wrong answer. So I think eradicate that there's a right answer and just find what really works for both of you.
And this is what you would do in a team launch, by the way. What Jen described is precisely what you would do with a group as well. Set expectations, let the group come up with the details that you're looking for. And what we have found is that the group will come up with deliverables that is much more ambitious than you could ever come up with if you do it together. That's the pattern that we see. So you coming up with the deliverables will actually be less ambitious than if the group does it together, feeling like they have the power of the group to make it work.
Yep, absolutely. So setting those deadlines together, talking about what project deliverables need to be done together. Absolutely. Thank you both. And it looks like, Jen, everybody loved the walking one-on-ones. I think that's a great tip to implement. Also get your steps in, especially as the weather gets nicer here. And so we are getting into the close of our session here. I wanted to ask, and Tsedal, since you're already off mute, if you want to start, any last words of wisdom or tips? We've talked about so many different ways to engage, and we've had so many great questions. So any last words of wisdom?
So what I would say is remote work, or sometimes we call it distributed work or dispersed work, is a skill. So everyone is in the midst of developing new work skills. So as leaders, it's important that you too are developing those skills, which you're doing right now, and that's fantastic. But also make sure that some of the things that you're learning today, you share with your team so that they're enhancing their skills for remote work. And what we're seeing right now is the virtualization of work. I don't think this is going to go away. I think that it's just accelerating the patterns and trends that has been going on for some time. And so these skills are going to be really helpful moving forward, and understand it as such, and not trying to take whatever you did at the office and replicate it online. You need to adapt to different manners of working. Your mindset has to be different. You're using digital tools. That'll be the easiest thing to learn, but how to motivate people from a distance, how to give them enough space, but also be attentive are the things that you need to understand. And also the last thing I'll say before closing is that although 80–90% of employees are working from home, there's a portion of our colleagues who are still going in the office because either they're essential employees, or banks and regulations are requiring it, or they're top leaders who are meeting as task forces on a regular basis. Don't forget them. Reach out to them, have your team reach out to folks, because right now they're feeling away in that everyone is at home, safe, but they have to keep going into the office. Make sure that everyone feels connected. So don't forget those who are still going into the office. They need your attention too. But thank you so much. It's such a privilege to spend this time with all of you. I wish you all the best. And we are putting out a lot of materials at the Harvard Business School on this topic. And Harvard Business Publishing is actually making their portals free on anything related to leadership, which I'm very, very glad about. So please feel free to tap any of those to continue to develop and enhance your skills.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tsedal. Jen, any final words of wisdom from you?
So I would just reiterate some of the key content and messages. Lead with trust. Communicate. Make sure to think about the safety and security. You know, it kind of does go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs at this moment, like make sure people feel safe and secure, and then work your way up. And lead with kindness. We have a custom at our company. We start every meeting with a moment of gratitude. And so I just invite you to think about maybe either what you're grateful for in someone else or grateful for in your life. And then just, if you employ those methods and take it one day at a time, I think we will get through this. Thank you for having us. We do also have a lot of free resources if you want to look at workhuman.com. We also just stood up a free platform as part of our corporate social responsibility to thank all our healthcare workers. It's preloaded with all hospitals around the globe. And we invite you to go in and send a message. I know people are looking for a way that they can thank those people who are essential and on the front lines. So if you just go in, it's a quick sign in. You're not going to get marketed. There's no ads. There's no money. There's no nothing. It's really our way of wanting to deliver to each hospital that we're thinking of them and we see them and we value them. So if there's a hospital that's particularly affiliated for you or your family, I invite you to go in. You can thank a person. You can thank the whole hospital. You can applaud the healthcare workers. And it gives them a little lift, a little shot of vitamin G for the day.
I love that. Thank you both so much again for joining us. And I think it's been so great to learn some of these best practices for managing virtual teams. I know that I'll be walking away with a lot. I took some notes. Before we close, I do want to highlight that the Boston Chamber of Commerce and City Awake have a packed digital agenda. Every Friday, you will find skills-based webinars as part of the Skills Up series. And then also the Small Business of the Year Awards are currently open. This is a great time for us to support some of our favorite local businesses and nominate them to win this award. And then you can learn more by going to bostonchamber.com and by signing up for their newsletter and following the Boston Chamber and City Awake and others on their social media platforms. So again, I want to thank Jen and Professor Neeley for all of your support and coming in for this session. And then I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Be well, be safe. Lovely to see you.